all that's going on with the Indian elections a little bit better. We have with us Mr. Andrew Whitehead, writer and former BBC senior journalist, joining us here in our Wion studios. We also have Lord Meghnad Desai, author and Professor Emeritus, LSC author and professor, joining us here. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us over here. What an interesting phase, the penultimate phase. We've discussed so much about the elections so far, but that voter turnout percentage, let's begin by talking about that. And it is about 50 odd, and that is primarily because the voting percentage in Delhi, the national capital, has been abysmal, to be polite.
You know, you can interpret it either way, but certainly there is no enthusiasm in this election. It's an old, tired election in which no new issues have been raised. And, you know, how often can you go on about Rafale versus, Bhrashtachar? And I think people just are not interested in turning up.
No? Right. And it's
they think it's all been decided. BJP is going to win, and so why bother?
Andrew, please go ahead.
I went to have a look at the voting in some of the East Delhi constituency polling booths this morning, and there was a steady trickle of people coming out, but it wasn't a torrent. And I think in part it was very hot. The air quality is distinctly poor today, but it doesn't feel like a landmark election as 5 years ago. There isn't a wave, there isn't that political excitement in the air. And also, Delhi's middle class, and particularly its upper middle class, just doesn't vote. I mean, by and large, it's quite strange. If you go to America, it's the underclass who don't vote. The people of property and wealth do vote. In the UK, there's a much higher turnout, by and large, in middle-class areas compared to poorer areas. In India, the poor know their strength, and they turn out to vote, and the upper middle class tend to think politics is dirty, we're always going to be outnumbered, it's not really for us, and they stay at home in their air-conditioned comfort.
And we should be heading over to the UK and settling down over there, most probably.
I mean, there is
I'm only saying that
only
because
if they've broken the law.
And otherwise, too, the average middle class, which barely breaks the law and pays back all of its loans, keep in mind. But the reason why I'm asking that, Andrew, is the fact that the situation in Delhi is reflective of, say, the situation in Bombay, in Mumbai. The South Mumbai votes as poorly as South Delhi does.
Well, the thing about India's elections, power rests with the rural poor. And they're the people that turn out in huge numbers, in very large percentages. And the people in the middle-class colonies in the cities feel that they're actually marginalised by that.
Exactly.
They use their power in different ways. They have money power, they have influence, they have nepotism, but they don't exercise their power through the ballot box.
You know, ultimately, election results are about reservations and entitlements. You know, how much Narega will get or how much, Nyay, thing like that. It doesn't concern the middle classes.
But it's strange, the irony of it all is that they are the ones who have the strongest of opinions, who discuss the most amount of politics. It's a national capital, for heaven's sake, that we're talking about over here. Politics gets discussed in every conversation around here. But when it comes to the moment of truth, there's very little to show.
I was actually talking to a political journalist here in Delhi who was actually showing me around East Delhi, and he was saying it's amazing. All the people who had been talking endlessly about who's winning, who's doing what do you think of Rahul, they're not going to come out and vote.
Mind you, Andrew is right. It was very hot because,
now we're blaming the weather for a poor voter turnout?
My family went to, my two elderly in-laws and my wife, they went, and they said it was very hot, and to go into a polling booth, which is kind of, you have to sweat. I mean, why can't polling booths be slightly more civilized? Why can't there be fans or, some coolers? People deserve a break. If they're going to turn up to vote, do something nice for them.
Well, that's a question that the Election Commission of India has to answer. And this comes at a time when the Election Commission of India has gotten so much praise from around the world for conducting this election, because which seems like a fairly impossible task for 1.3 billion people, and to reach out and, just this phase alone, thousands of polling booths per phase of the Indian election. And that's the reason why I want to move on to polling and polling violence, because the other thing that's noticeable this time today, the sixth phase, is violence on polling day in West Bengal. Again, now, the gulf between the state government of West Bengal and the central government is very well known. But that's the case in so many other states. How come it is that West Bengal witnesses violence time and again?
West Bengal has always been a state in which the ruling party rules everything and has all the gangsters in its pay. I mean, be it CPM or be it TMC. This is the first time TMC faces a massive challenge to its hegemony. And the violence and the turnout shows this is a crucial election for West Bengal, crucial for Mamata Banerjee. Her credibility depends on it. If BJP said take half the West Bengal seats, her credibility will be destroyed.
Do you see that happening, Andrew, this time around?
I think the BJP is going to win seats, quite a number of seats in West Bengal. I suspect Trinamool will still have the advantage. But if we look back at the assembly elections only, 3 years ago, the BJP was in fourth place in West Bengal. And now it's a two-horse race between Trinamool and the BJP. But of course, I'm not extenuating or excusing or minimising the violence that we've seen. It's deplorable, but nevertheless, the level of violence is so much more subdued than we've seen in West Bengal in elections.
The previous election. So would you say that it's been a reduction in that?
Over the years, it would be much worse. Now it is only in places like West Bengal where it really matters who wins. And the election where this poor woman, the BJP candidate, got hurt, is where Mamata's chosen successor. Is a TMC candidate.
And
so
she
that's
herself,
it, they have to win.
And the BJP candidate herself was once a close associate of Mamata Banerjee. That's another thing to notice over here. The BJP candidate who got attacked during polling day today. The reason why I'm asking this question about West Bengal is that, for example, let's take a similar state like Kerala, which has been largely communist rule. It has people protesting, and it's been highly contentious. But doesn't still witness the kind of violence that probably West Bengal does.
Historically, Kerala has taken politics very seriously, but there has been friendship across party leaders. When there was the first communist government in Kerala way back in the 50s, and the PSP and so on, they fought like anything, but they were all friends of each other. But that kind of spirit was here for a while, but now there's much more sharp political and cultural differences.
But there are blemishes of a different sort in parts of South India. So in Tamil Nadu, the buying of votes is an industry. There's almost tariffless.
It's the only organised vote buying industry in the country, so to speak.
And the amount of money is just astonishing. We've got one constituency where voting has been delayed because round about, I think it's 11 crore in cash has been seized in just one constituency. So
in one raid.
That's right. And that's just one party as well. So, I mean, there are different problems in different parts of the country. But I think your earlier point that the Election Commission has transformed how elections are conducted here, and by and large, enormously for the better. And I think it's the most admirable of public bodies in this country.
So at this
Given that people misuse it all the time by futile complaints and just getting publicity, rushing to the Supreme Court, I think the Election Commission has got great patience,
Oh, absolutely.
And so much more effective.
No IPL umpire would tolerate behaviour like that.
But if you compare it to Britain, though, if you compare it to the Electoral Commission in the UK, the Election Commission here is much more effective.
Absolutely.
And politicians are scared of it in a way that is not the case in London. It's quite a success.
And especially this elections that we have seen complaints fly back and forth between both the principal parties to the Election Commission. The Election Commission is
Exactly.
But the model code of conduct is very, I mean, on paper at least, very, very restrictive. You can't be rude about your opponents. There's lots of things that you aren't allowed to do, which would be a normal part of political discourse in many other countries.
I know we're digressing right now, but if I were to quickly ask you, do you think the model code of conduct needs a tweak, considering what we've seen happen in this election?
I think it needs to reflect that actually you expect a robust exchange of views at election time, and you don't want to have a situation where every single party is running to the Election Commission every other day complaining about some remark or other. I think we need to be a little bit more grown up than that.
All right, remarks?
I have an idea that what the Election Commission should do, they should give score. And they will say, at the end of the election, we will deduct votes from winning parties, depending on how badly they have scored. We're not going to stop you. Not going to stop you from
this is reminding me
but
of
we're going to punish you.
I know.
I know it won't be.
I know it's a great sporting day. You have the English Premier League football matches going down to the wire. You also have the IPL finals happening tonight. And what you just said sounded like the Fair Play Award in the Indian Premier League. Whoever plays the fairest gets to win the elections.
Exactly.
Well, it sounds like yellow cards and red cards as well.
Yeah, that as well.
Absolutely.
That as well. Hold on with us. Hold on to your thoughts for a second. Let's quickly focus on this. The election season is drawing to a close because it's the penultimate phase. It's done with one more phase to go. And come 23rd of May, the world will know the mandate of the largest democracy in the world. Over the last 1 month, ladies and gentlemen, voters have taken on the rain, the sun, harsh terrain even, and sometimes even a natural disaster to cast their votes. Thousands flew in from across continents to exercise their franchise. The spirit of the Indian democracy made headlines across the world. But there's just one disturbing trend that we have noticed this election season. We're talking about the low voter turnout in the Indian metros, while the dwellers of these 4 major cities were never really among the most excited voters in the first place. Their turnout had improved over the years, actually. The trend, however, has been reversed in 2 cases this year, this election. We're talking about the dip in the Delhi voter turnout and the Chennai voter turnout. Take a look at the numbers of the last 3 Lok Sabha elections. Let's take a look at Delhi first. In 2009, only 51.85% of the registered voters in Delhi turned up to cast their mandate. 2014, the number improved drastically with a turnout of 65.10%. Fast forward to this day, the turnout in Delhi today has been disappointing, to say the least. Despite all the radio, television and internet campaigns, the capital just did not come out to vote as expected. As a result, the voter turnout was a meager 55.4% up until 6 p.m. and the capital had once again failed to lead by example. Let's take a look at Mumbai next, the financial capital. The maximum city has been infamous for a minimum voter turnout. The numbers have been embarrassingly low. The positive side to this is that the numbers are gently improving. In 2009, only 41.4% of the voters had come out to vote. 2014, the turnout was 51.59%. There has been an increase in the numbers this year too, with 55.1%. The graph is definitely positive, but it's just not good enough for a city filled with icons and celebrities like Mumbai, Delhi. Delhi has a moral responsibility of sorts to lead by example. To Chennai next, the southern city of Chennai, the capital of the state of Tamil Nadu. This city has historically had a better turnout than Mumbai or Delhi, but this southern city has seen a dip too in the voter turnout over the last 3 phases. The numbers are on your screen: 62.87 in 2009, 61.94 in 2014, and 59.01% in this elections. Right, and we began our chat with this, and there's a reason why we're discussing this at 7 p.m. tonight, because let's get first this problem out of the way, because most of the viewers are, again, English-speaking, English-thinking of the country. Many of them extremely knowledgeable, been around the world. But what do you think is the problem over here? Because is it a problem with this particular elections? Because we've seen a dip across the board, and it's not like Delhi is bound to show improvement, hasn't shown improvement. Bombay has been stuck. Chennai, surprisingly, sometimes sees 70-80% voter turnout during state elections.
But in Chennai, the vote is only down a little bit.
Yes.
And Tamil Nadu politics has been deprived of its 2 big figures.
Fair enough.
Jayalalitha's not there. Karunanidhi is not there.
Yeah.
There aren't the towering charismatic figures that there have been in the past. So you can see that there's not quite the same excitement there.
All right, and we'll leave Chennai apart. Lord Meghnath Desai, Mumbai, Delhi?
Mumbai has always been like this. As you said, South Delhi is the culprit. South Bombay is the culprit.
And the reason why I'm asking this again at the end of the show is because there is a moral responsibility. Mumbai and Delhi, sort of represent, different sets of aspirations for India. If one is power, the other is money.
Yeah, all that is true, but you have to believe that only through election can you affect government policy. If you are a money person, you have many other opportunities to influence public policy. Yeah. You don't have to vote.
And you can talk about moral responsibility, but if people just don't want to shoulder that responsibility, I don't think there's very much that you can do. I think, those who aren't voting are making a mistake, but it's their privilege. I don't think there's any point in making voting compulsory, because that brings in yet another layer of bureaucracy. And indeed, how can you make it compulsory? I mean, one of the problems is, of course, that not everybody's registered to vote. You know, you've got 20 million women across India who simply aren't registered to vote, who don't even appear in these figures. That, I think, is a greater concern.
And also the compulsion that you have to be personally there to vote.
Yeah.
If you have gone away for work or something, you can't cast a postal vote, or you can't just kind of, you know. I think I would just say, you know, online voting. That's the answer.
Yeah.
You just go and, you know, online vote. And
well, certainly the paradox of urban India expects us to learn a few lessons and make a few changes as we move forward in the world's biggest democracy. But for now, we've completely run out of time here. Andrew Whitehead, Lord Meghnad Desai, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here on the show. And with that, it is a wrap here from my side. This is Krishna Kumar signing off.